Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Shuchandra Ghosh, Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta. The subject is Indian culture. The paper is Indian polity, and today I will be discussing regional polities, North India, from the 3rd century CE to the 6th century CE. The main objective of this course is that to make the students understand about the presence of other kingdoms during the time of Guptas in north of India, and so that they become aware of the rise of these kingdoms from principalities under the Guptas to independent kingdom and finally leading to the disintegration of the Gupta Empire. In the Gupta polity, you have learnt about the escapades of the rulers of the Gupta Empire and how Samudragupta in particular from his Allahabad inscription went and had different kinds of relationship with rulers of North India, of Dakshinapatha and in other rulers. Here the main attempt is to see that during the time of the Gupta rules we have other kingdoms also and how they actually reacted with the Guptas, and the nature of the polity was monarchical as well as non-monarchical. The 3rd century CE signaled the death knell of a great power, the Kushanas in the northern part of India and in the northwestern borderland of the subcontinent. We have the Nakshi-Rustam inscription of Shapur II, from where we get this information. Now, with the decline of the Kushanas, the political scenario was dominated by numerous independent indigenous powers. The independent powers were the Malavas, the Yodhyas, the Arjunayanas and the Madrakas in eastern Punjab and Rajasthan, the Nagas in western Uttar Pradesh, the Maghas at Kausambi, a number of small tribal states and forest kingdoms in the south of Uttar Pradesh. This was the scenario after the decline of the Kushanas. In the Ganga basin, we find that there were multiple powers, and these powers were mostly monarchical. On the other hand, with the exception of Nepal in the north, it was surrounded on all the 3 sides by a ring of states which were mostly Gana-samgha, which are known as republican or oligarchical and often also as tribal. There is a separate section on Gana-samghas, and therefore you will learn from that study that how the Gana-samghas had actually worked right from the time of the Buddha. Now here we find that these Gana-samghas were not dominated by Brahmanical ideology of monarchy and was actually an alternative to monarchy. Gradually, the Gana-samgha political tradition had to succumb to the monarchical system, and I will discuss how in the Allahabad Prashasti we find that the Gana-samghas were finally completely uprooted by Samudragupta. Now, during the post-Mauryan times, before the rise of the Guptas, the Gana-samghas that were very active were the Malavas, Shibi, Audambara, Vrishni, Arjunayana, Kunindas and the Yodhyas. And if you look at this map, you can understand the location, and you can say that they were mostly in the region of the Punjab, and from this region they migrated gradually to Rajasthan area, and only the Kunandas went towards the Himalayas, and they were located on the banks of the 5 Punjab rivers and finally to Rajasthan. These areas where the Gana-samghas were located were important networks of communication. Since they were located in the important networks of communication, they were interacting with different kinds of powers. For example, they were interacting with the Indo-Greeks, later on with the Indo-Parthians, Indo-Scythians, the Kushanas, and therefore there was a process of change within them. And we have lot of these Gana-samgha's powers issuing coins and where we have the word Gana, and normally the coins with the word Gana are assignable to the 3rd and 4th century CE. With the passage of time, we find that the Yodhas, we have this inscription called the Vijaygarh inscription and the seal, which speak of a Maharaja, Mahashenapati, and the seal adds Mahashatrapa to it as the head of the Yodhya Republic. Now this is very interesting because the assumption of the Mahashatrapa title was perhaps the result of the close association with the Shakas and Kushanas, and secondly, what is important to note is that they were Ganas, but now they were moving into a kind of a monarchical structure because they were using this title of Mahashatrapa or Mahashenapati, Maharaja. These were monarchical titles. So the changes could be perceived in this sphere. And as I mentioned earlier, since they were a part of the huge network, the discovery of lot of coin molds were found in Sunet region, in Haryana and other places. Then we have from Rohtak also, and near in the Ludhiana district of Punjab, we have lot of coin molds, not only coins but also coined molds which bear testimony to this. The use of the title Maharaja also indicate a temporary inclination towards monarchical polity within the broader framework of non-monarchical polity, as they continues the term Gana. So why I am saying that within the broader framework of non-monarchical? Because though they were calling themselves Maharajas and were moving into monarchical, they were not leaving the title Gana. So we have in their coins Yodhyanam Ganasya Jaya, Malavanam Ganasya Jaya. So the Gana character is retained in their coins. For the Malavas, we have also a very interesting inscription from Natsa region in eastern Rajasthan, and it records the performance of the Ekashashti Ratra sacrifice by a scion of the royal Malava family. The Malavas were claiming a high status, as high as the Ikshwakus. So Ikshwakus were the monarchical powers. Now the performance of such vratas or such sacrifices also indicates their inclination towards monarchical structure. And they were also constructing their genealogy, which is associated with the Brahmanical idea of legitimation of monarchical powers. Geographically, if we look, then we find that the area of the Malavas saw the rise of two branches of monarchical powers of the Aulikara ruling house in the Dashapura area, which is present-day Mandsaur in Rajasthan. So the presence of the Aulikara ruling house marked the end of the non-monarchical Malavas. So thus this shift could be seen finally from non-monarchical power to monarchical. Now we shall move on to the scenario where we find that the non-monarchical powers are located in an area, and finally the foundation of the Gupta power can be envisaged or can be noticed. The Gupta power was founded, as we know, by Chandragupta I, and it brought back the middle Ganga valley and the region around Pataliputra to political limelight. Because during the rule of the Kushanas, the seat of power was Mathura in the Ganga-Yamuna Doab. So from the northwest, the powers were moving towards the east, and finally the middle Ganga valley gains importance. So this shift of the geopolitical focus is particularly important as being firmly rooted in the middle Ganga valley. The Guptas sought to exterminate rivals in the Ganga-Yamuna Doab, Upper Ganga Valley, Punjab and Haryana, Central India and Malwa Plateau, and tried to expand in the lower Ganga regions. So there was a mood of expansion. Now if you look at this map actually shows you that what was the territory of the Gupta powers and where like the Guptas had relationship with the Lichavis, then you can see the Malava region, Mathura, then the Yodhayas, Arjunayanas, and how these powers were present during the time of the early Guptas. And finally, we will see that how they were completely disintegrated. You can see in the middle, the Parivrajakas, the Uchakalpas. So these were the powers who were present during the time of the Guptas, and we will discuss how these powers from a subordinate power of the Guptas gradually rose into prominence, and finally with the disintegration of the Gupta power became an important kingdom of the early medieval period. So there was a major power formation. The Allahabad pillar inscription gives us a detailed account about the annihilation of the non-monarchical powers. So we learn that these non-monarchical powers paid homage and tributes to Samudragupta. These were the Malavas, who were residing in the Jaipur area, Arjunayanas located in the Delhi-Jaipur-Agra triangle. You have seen the map earlier, the Yodhayas, and then the Khakas, Kharaparikas, Madrakas, Abhiras, Prarjunas, Shanakanikas. So these were all ruling in different pockets, and finally they were annihilated by the Gupta ruler Samudragupta. The next step is the kingdoms which were subordinate to the Guptas, they were now consolidating within themselves and forming a monarchical structure. And these are located in the peripheral region of the Gupta Empire, as mentioned in the Allahabad Prashasti. So we find that in some cases, when Samudragupta is talking about the rulers, he is calling them merely Nripatis, and they are not referred to by their names, just Nripatis of a particular region. So this is a pointer to the fact that these rulers were merely chiefs and did not have or did not deserve enough attention from the Gupta ruler to be referred to by name, because we know when the Gupta rulers the Samudragupta was talking about the 12 rulers of Dakshinapatha, so we have the names of the rulers, but in this case we are not having the name. A process of consolidation for these Nripatis started, and then we find that for example in Kamarupa in Upper Assam and Samatata in southeastern Bangladesh, these kingdoms were gradually rising. Samatata and Kamarupa were also one of the frontier states, Pratyanta Nripatis, as mentioned in the Allahabad inscription of Samudragupta in the 4th century, and so perhaps the incipient state now was put under a ruling family by the Gupta emperor. So this is the map. Samatata is presently in Bangladesh, in southeastern Bangladesh. So you have this Kumilla area, that entire area was known as Samatata, which you can understand from this map. And on the right you have Kamarupa, which is present day Assam. Now if we look at Kamarupa, we find that from a genealogical account given in the Nidhanpur copper plate of Bhaskar Varman, Pushyavarman was the first historical ruler of Kamarupa, and he may be placed in about 350 AD or a little earlier. Interestingly, Pushyavarman, out of his loyalty and devotion to his Gupta ruler or Gupta emperor, named his son and daughter-in-law Samudravarman and Datta Devi or Dattavati. Though Kamarupa was comparatively a small frontier kingdom in the 4th and 5th centuries AD, in the first half of the 6th century, it appears that King Narayanavarman performed 2 Ashwamedha sacrifices, which evidently indicates some increase in the power of the family under him, and gradually we find that Kamarupa emerges as an independent kingdom and becomes one of the major powers in the early 7th century. Samatata, which perhaps was experiencing rudimentary form of monarchical setup in the 4th century, but finally by 6th century Samatata definitely experienced monarchical setup. We have this Maharaja Vainyagupta who was ruling in the region, and finally in the 7th century we find that Samatata emerges as an independent monarchical kingdom, its kings being given the designation of Samateshwara or Lord of Samatata, and they were issuing gold coins. This example I have used to show that how a small peripheral kingdom or a frontier kingdom developed into an independent kingdom by the end of the 6th century when the Gupta powers were disintegrated. Now let us move into the scenario of other regional powers. All this time I was talking about the Eastern Kingdom. Now in this map you can see the other powers who were active during the time of the Guptas. So you have Pallavi, Saurashtra, then you have Bharukacha in the near Narmada, then you have in Kalinga, there is the Kalinga region. So this map gives you an idea of the powers, the Gupta Empire and the powers that were important at that point of time. During the time, we have in the Bagelkhand region, the forest kingdom. Now, in the Allahabad Prashasti, we know that the Gupta emperor reduced the forest chiefs, Otavika Rajas, to his servants. It is said, Parivrajaka Krita. These forest chiefs may conveniently be located in the present Bagelkhand region, and it is obvious that this region was initially outside the purview of a complex state society. So it was not within the monarchical structure, but with the penetration of the Gupta power in these regions, emergence of a state structure following the pattern of the Gupta administrative system could be noticed. So the area which was not under a proper monarchical setup were gradually gaining monarchical structure. And this we know from their inscriptions. We have two dynasties actually of this region. One is the Uchakalpa and the other is the Parivrajaka family. So this is reflected from the copper plate inscription of Sarvanatha dated 512 CE belonging to the Uchakalpa family, and another copper plate inscription of Shangshobha dated to 529 CE belonging to the Parivrajaka family. Both of these ruling houses were feudatories of the Guptas and gradually rising into power. Thus, the pre-state Otobico society ends up being transformed into a monarchical setup. With monarchical setup, the social structure naturally became more complex and Brahmanical or Shastric norms were championed. As regards the Parivrajaka rulers, the Parivrajakas in the Otobico area boasted to have upheld and maintained the Varna organization. So it is said in the inscription, Varnasrama Dharma Sthapana Niratana. So a complex social structure was witnessed with the creation of agraharas, and this is very important that we look at the land donations in this region, which were revenue-free settlements and were used in favor of religious dones. So Brahmanical or Shastric norms were instruments which provided some kind of validation or legitimation in a society which was increasingly, there was inequality of access to resources and status and power. So Brahmanical Varnasrama Dharma gave them legitimation. The passage from the pre-state to state polity was also made possible by the incorporation of the autochthonous cults into the Brahmanaka belief systems and also the patronage of the dominant autochthonic deities. Purely here I may refer to Pishtapurika, the goddess, who was brought into the purview of worship of these rulers. The next phase that we see, that with the rise of these kingdoms which were originally under the Guptas, now with their rise another picture comes into the forefront, and that is that gradually the Gupta power was disintegrating. The Ganas passed into oblivion. The state society represented by the emergence of ruling lineages had covered all the nuclear regions and had progressed well into the peripheral areas by the end of the Gupta period. So the areas which were in the frontiers were now emerging as important kingdoms. Hereditary succession in the high official posts as well as in the families of the feudatory rulers resulted in the tendency to concentrate power in the hands of certain groups, which naturally threatened the stability of the empire. So some groups became powerful and so they were trying to be independent. That happened also in case of the peripheral kingdoms. Let us look at the region in eastern India, Kalinga, which was the outlying province of the Guptas. Here we have the Sumandala inscription of the year 250, which is dated to 569-70, refers to the rule of Prithvi Vigraha in Kalinga Rashtra in the Gupta kingdom. We do not know who was Prithvi Vigraha's overlord, but it seems that there has to be somebody from the Gupta kingdom. The rest of the century is marked by the rule of the Manas in the north and the Shoiladbhavas in the south. So here ultimately they were doing away with the Gupta monarchs. Then in the Ganga valley we have the Maukharis. The Maukharis, who had earlier served the Guptas, were causing serious trouble to the Gupta monarch later on. The record of the Maukhari chief Anantavarman from the Gaya district, paleographically dated to about the first half of the 6th century, do not either attribute to him the title of a paramount sovereign or refer to the rule of the Guptas. So it appears that Anantavarman assumed de facto independence owing perhaps a nominal allegiance to the Guptas. So this was a process where we find that the allegiance were shifted. Then if we move further west, we find in the Malava region, the Risthal inscription of Prakashadharman, which is dated in 514 to 515 CE, and the Mandasur inscription of Yashodharman of 531-32 CE, the Olikara rulers. It suggests that this family had a great role in stemming the Huna menace in India and weakening the existing Gupta kingdom. That was in the western part. The Maukharis probably extended their power to the region of Uttar Pradesh, established the capital at Kannauj. They and the family of Krishnagupta, known as the later Guptas, became the two principal contending powers of northern India during the second half of the 6th century CE. Apart from these major dynasties, we have other regional dynasties which also became important. A rising political force about this time was the dynasty of Pushpavati at Thaneshwar in the Ambala district of Haryana. The Maitrakas of Ballavi, who had been ruling as feudatories from the last quarter of the 5th century, assumed independence in the second half of the 6th century and gained importance by the end of that century. The Gurjaras founded a small kingdom in the Jodhpur area of Rajasthan by about the middle of the 6th century. Another principality which I showed you earlier in the map was around Broj, that is Bharukacha, and it was carved out by the Gurjaras in about the last quarter of the same century. What was the situation in the northwest? We find that the Sassanians, the local ruling families of the Punjab area, the group of the Kidaras and the Hunas dominated areas in different times. So it shows that the Gupta empire was actually weakening and breaking up. And finally, what we find that if we look at the entire period, it comes to the point that from the 3rd to the 6th century, there is a remarkable spread of monarchical polity. The political scenario cannot be viewed in terms of unitary powers wielding authorities over large territories. So you do not have one single power as a ruler of a large territory. Even the superior political power and position of the Guptas did not lead to the establishment of a paramount political power in the subcontinent. And at the close of the 6th century, North India experienced the emergence of a number of ruling houses who were originally vassals of the Guptas in different areas. Though the strength and power of all these ruling houses varied, some of them made their presence felt at the turn of the century, 7th century, and North India saw the rise of some very important powers like the Pushyabhutis, the Maukharis, the later Guptas. So there were a kind of a major power formation. The Maitrakas were powerful in Western India, and in Eastern India, Bengal emerged for the first time as a power to reckon with in North Indian politics under Shashanka of Gaura. In Assam, we have the rise of the Varman dynasty with Bhaskar Varman as an important power. Thus, we find that if we look at this period, the shifts in the process of political structure is very evident. The powers which were originally subordinate to the Guptas gradually were emerging as important kingdoms, and finally these emergence led to the disintegration of the Gupta Empire. What we find that in Bengal, Shashanka was regarded as the Lord of Gaura. Bengal per se was not there at that point of time. It was an agglomeration of several small sub-regional powers. And then the rise of Shashanka and his taking part in the political struggle of North India made him very important, and we can see the major power formations in the entire north of India. So we have the later Guptas in Bihar, we have the Maukharis in the UP region, then later on that region was covered by the Pushyabhutis who were originally in the Punjab regions. In the west we have the Maitrakas of Ballavi. Then when we come down, I have not discussed South India because you will have a separate module on that. But you can see that Pulakeshin was there. And then if we go to the east, you find that Shashanka, Bhaskar Varman of Assam, and in the Orissa region, there are local powers, for example, the Shailadvaba dynasty, the Manas, which I have talked about. So all these powers were forming small independent groups. So there was no one single authority ruling over the entire North India after the disintegration of the Guptas. So it were a conglomeration, there were several regional powers. Therefore, this was the beginning of the early medieval period, which actually saw the rise of regional powers and regional polities in the Indian subcontinent. If you want further information, you can visit the EPG Pathshala, where there will be other modules which can actually substantiate what I have talked today. So a module on early medieval polity will actually follow this module of regional polities. Thank you.